All right.
चेतन भगत इस वक्त ज्वाइन कर चुके हैं और आस्क एफएम इस बजट पे अगर कोई भी सवाल है टॉकथॉन श्री अरुण जेटली जो कि फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर हैं वो सीधे लेंगे और सोशल मीडिया से जुड़ते हुए ये प्रयास सीधे आप तक पहुंचता हो तो आपके पास भी अगर कोई सवाल है तो आप वित्त मंत्री से कर सकते हैं इस पूरे टॉकथॉन के दौरान ये पूरा 1 घंटा प्रोग्राम चलेगा।
Imagine making a home budget at home or making a budget with your friends, how difficult it is. Now imagine spending 20 lakh crores around that much and earning that much for the country and doing it year after year. I have the Honorable Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, who's very, very tired. So thank you so much for taking the time for coming and talking to citizens.
शुरू होने वाला है और मशहूर लेखक चेतन भगत इसको मॉडरेट करेंगे और पूरे देश और दुनिया से सवाल लेंगे सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म पर। ट्विटर के ज़रिए आप वित्त मंत्री से सवाल कर सकते हैं। मेरे ख्याल से #AskFM है जिसका इस्तेमाल करते हुए आप सवाल कर सकते हैं और सीधे वित्त मंत्री उसका जवाब देंगे। थोड़ी देर में ये नेशनल मीडिया सेंटर में इसकी शुरुआत होने वाली है। सोशल मीडिया जो सेक्शन है, देखिए इस वक्त वित्त मंत्री कुछ बोल रहे हैं। और जिस तरह से हमने कहा कि ये जो बजट है 2000
which means you have one integrated India as an economic entity, a more efficient
कि मुझे लगता है कि
All right, so those are the live visuals we're getting there from that talkathon, and like Ajay was saying, author Chetan Bhagat is moderating.
Which changes the way we live and the way we spend. Now you can no longer go and buy a property partly in check and partly in cash. To maintain accounts in kacha and in pakka khatas, all that is over. And this is coupled with a lot of moves. You can't spend more. Today I have announced that you can't anything more than 3 lakhs. If you pay in cash is an offence. Anything more than 2 lakhs you spend, you have to give a PAN card. So there are spending restrictions in order to get people to change their way of life. And the third, I think, is also very important, is the jam trinity, where the weaker sections get, you have such a huge digital network now in the country that people get their support directly into their bank accounts. So everybody has a bank account instead of, for example, the two of us sitting here, do you realize we get subsidies also? We used to get the cooking gas subsidy. Every time we travel by train, we get subsidized. Every time we buy kerosene, we get subsidized.
I got my education subsidized.
Well, our 80C tax rebates is a tax subsidy which is given to us. So we all get subsidies. So now how do you target subsidies and put directly into the bank accounts of the poor people? That's the third one. And demonetization did impact because demonetization brings in more money into the banking system. It improves the ability of the banks to lend. It brings down the tax, the interest rates. And it will now increase the size of the formal economy. So more indirect tax, more direct tax. Now couple up GST and demonetization, you have a much bigger formal economy than what you had.
Yeah, and we'll get back to demonetization later. But since you mentioned, I think for me, I liked in this budget that they were not too much tinkering around. Every budget used to have in the evening, all the industry sector guys come in and say, "Mera excise 2% bar gaya, mera excise 2%."
You know the reason why we didn't?
And you've not done that.
I'll tell you what we did. We didn't tinker with excise because if from the 1st of July the GST is coming and excise merges into the GST, why should I tinker with service tax and GST only
so
as
the
excise
FM,
for the purpose of...
Well, maybe because it was your last chance, but I think the FM is in GST mode already. You are in GST mode.
Yeah, we are in the GST mode and therefore the GST Council now will decide the rates as far as July onwards is concerned. So why should we on the eve of that start tinkering with it? As far as customs duties are concerned, except when it was absolutely necessary because our duty structure is a little inverted, you correct those aberrations and I put them in the schedule. Now these are the minor aspects of the budget in that sense.
There are some other, and I think we discussed earlier also that the budget is about policy more now, which is how a mature economy should be rather than a slew of Santa Claus like announcements ki mujhe kya diya, mujhe kya diya. And I think one of the big announcement is the removal of FIPB. And what was the thinking in that?
we need foreign investment.
Yeah.
Investment is the starting point of all economic activity. Either you have huge amount of money in your own country and you say, I don't need any other money, which is not the fact.
Yeah.
We are short of resources and therefore we need money. Now, 90% of FDI that comes into India is through the automatic route in any case.
Yeah.
So the FIPB now is an organization of the past which only deals with 10% cases. And these are those 10% cases where you already have in the concerned ministries a regulatory mechanism. So if you need FIP, let us say in the IT sector, the
You have
IT
the
ministry.
IT, yeah.
If you need it in broadcasting, you have the INB ministry. So you will have it in every ministry where some amount of regulation is there. Now, why can't those concerned ministries handle this work? Why should the investor have to run from Shastri Bhavan to North Block and vice versa in order to make an investment into India? But we can't, so it's one more step which is cut, and I think this eases the way of doing business.
Yeah, good. I don't want to don't want to discuss specific cases of FDI here, but there is one which is very interesting and I think it has far big consequences, which is the entry of Apple in India. And we're going to get to the budget, but how are you dealing with cases like this? I've heard that they made some special requests.
Well, I'm told they made a request. You see, we have a regulation that in single brand retail,
yeah,
you require 30% domestic sourcing.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
talking of them manufacturing iPhones in India.
Yeah,
I think that's what
they want to manufacture in India, and therefore for that you need some kind of a domestic components. Now they made a representation to the Department of Industry Policy and Promotion, which the Commerce Minister Nirmala ji handles, and that ministry is handling it.
Okay.
After they take a view on it, they'll probably get back to the other departments in the government, including the Finance Ministry, and the government collectively will take a view.
Okay, let's go to some people from questions from the actual people, from citizens on Ask Your FM. Let me see. Okay, here comes, and like I said, I will not just ask him the easy question, ask him the tough questions as long as it's put well. So here's from Sanesh Tuneja. He's talking about one very big thing which you have done, and I must say that is something I've never heard a government do, is talk about reforming political funding, which you have done it. It wasn't even expected in the budget, but you did it. And I think it's getting all-round praise. But there is one concern, and I think that's what Sanesh talks about. Instead of one donation of 20,000, parties will show 10 donations of 2,000 rupees
I'll tell
each.
you.
Is that an issue, that anonymity is still there?
No, I'll tell you. There is an issue. And the issue has been significantly addressed. You see, 70 years after independence, the world's largest democracy has a hush-hush funding mechanism. Now, when I was the law minister, I took an initiative. I amended the Representation of People's Act, Companies Act, and we got the Finance Ministry to amend the Income Tax Act. That if you give a donation to a political party, in the hands of the donor, it will be treated as an expenditure.
Yeah.
In the hands of the party, it will be exempted income. And we thought this is the greatest reform. Everybody will start now donating by check. Some improvement took place. My own impression is that a small part of the money now comes by check. The rest still comes by big cash donations. Now there is a regulation that up to 20,000, above 20,000 you have to declare the name of the donor.
Yeah.
So parties will take the big cash and split it into 20,000 donations.
All the Ramlals.
And they will put all the names. Now therefore this anonymous donations comes in. The Election Commission said, do away with this 20,000 and make it 2,000.
Yeah.
That no party can receive more than 2,000 from a single donor. Now, this is a recommendation of the Election Commission. They have thought over it. We've accepted it. Now, the present scheme that I have worked out is a party can accept by check, cash donation not more than 2,000 from a person.
Yeah.
Now, splitting up crores into 2,000 each is going to be difficult even remembering names, finding names. Third, which I think is the most important reform, digitally. So every party must issue an appeal to its body of supporters, like President Obama did, and get millions of people to donate small amounts to you. Small amounts don't create a quid pro quo, and you can collect the same amount of money. It's a little effort. Now you don't have to physically go there, you can do it digitally. So we've provided that. And the fourth, some anonymity was required, but to ensure that it is white money. Because the body of donors said, all the donors we spoke to, that the moment I give by check and my identity is revealed, I fear consequences.
कि क्यों दिया उसको?
उसको क्यों दिया? Now, in states like Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal,
it's a genuine concern.
One party in power is going to take revenge against the donors or to the other party. And they said, if you disclose identities, we won't give it. We don't like the whole idea of siphoning money and then paying cash. That's also burdensome.
Yeah.
So find a way. So I have found a way that we will notify a scheme whose broad parameters will be, a notified bank will be there. By payment against check, you buy an electoral bond from the bank.
Yeah.
So it's white tax-paid money. You can donate to 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 political parties. The parties will be required to maintain at least one bank account which they have to declare to the Election Commission. All the bonds that they get during an election from 20 or 100 sympathizers or donors will all go into that bank account, and that will be disclosed to the Election Commission and to the income tax. Now, the bank, of course, knows who has bought the bonds, but how he has distributed them,
that is
not known. Because if that gets known, then he won't buy the bonds. Then he'll prefer cash.
No,
Then
that's
you go back to the
definitely,
present problem.
we don't see innovations in politics every day.
So this is an innovation which means you will now have, by check, white money, by digital clean money, by bonds clean money coming into the accounts of political parties, and political parties will have to adjust to this clean money coming in. It's a system. Now you will have to file a return. And if you breach this, that is, you take a crore of rupees from a party and then say, well, I'm splitting into 5,000 Ramlals. If you did that, then you run the risk of losing the tax exemption.
Okay.
That's how the law is going to be framed. So clean money, and we will fix this 2,000, which was the recommendation of the Election Commission.
Good. But tell me something. Did you have resistance in your own political circle?
Well,
did they say, Jaitley sir, kya kar rahe ho aap hamara?
I don't know whether you followed the speeches of the Prime Minister since demonetization. He's mentioned it more than once. I am now determined to clean the political funding system, and parties should come to a consensus. He said this more than once.
Yeah, he definitely.
And therefore, I must say that when this idea was mooted, it was an idea which was actually close to his heart. I've been working on this ever since I was law minister. I made the first reform. I have now again done it. I hope it succeeds, because if this one fails,
no, it's definitely going to succeed. It's just that a lot of people talk about it, but to actually do it takes a lot of political will. It's basically tying your own hands to easy money. But I think this is.
No, I think in India, a lot of people will be willing to donate white money, but they don't want to tom-tom it.
Correct. And they definitely don't want it on the books saying to BJP 5 crore in their annual report. So now they'll say political.
You see, the other disadvantage is if you say I gave 5 crores to BJP or 5 crores to Congress, and 5 years later, this man is a businessman, he legitimately gets a contract from a government.
And then people will connect the dots.
Let us say through a bidding system, somebody say, oh, you gave money, so you've got it. And then somebody will file a PIL. Now, they don't want to get into these kind of problems, so it's better. Let's experiment. It's a huge improvement on the present system. May not be the best system, so let's experiment.
It's very radical, and I think this is one aspect which has got all-round praise. I'll go to Monica D'Souza, who talks about cyber security. She's talking about cyber security being imperative to foster trust in digital payments. We're talking of making the whole country digital. So are there any budgetary allocations over this?
You see, we've now for cyber security created a whole group. I've announced it today in the budget, and a whole group has been created. And of course, this is something which is of vital importance. Unless you build firewalls, you can't have a digital economy. If the whole system can get cracked for the asking.
And then suddenly if some big incident happens, people lose faith in it and all that. So I think that's good. You can just refresh some questions here. You know, we keep getting this data of only 17 lakh people say they make more than 10 lakhs and all kinds of, like, it's the number of people who claim to be making money in India are in the lakhs, whereas our population is 120 crores. And I think that's not so much a policy issue. Do you think, as just somebody who's seen India and you manage the finances of India, do you think it's a cultural issue, it's a moral issue that we just don't like to pay taxes?
You see, we are a very deeply religious nation. We are conservative. We are God-fearing. We believe in family values. We talk of high values. But we don't consider duping the government of its taxes as a moral hazard.
Yeah.
And we think this is just smartness. This is how I violated the law. Now, yesterday the CBDT, through its programming, revealed the first analysis. They overlooked every man who has deposited 3 lakh rupees or less in cash. They went above 3 lakhs. And they found that 18 lakh people, their deposits have no relationship with their income.
And have this must have required some serious big data analysis.
Yeah, this is a preliminary data analysis. A serious data analysis will reveal more. Now, one of the facts I mentioned, how many people are voluntarily paying tax? So, above 5 lakhs, total number of assessees is 76 lakhs.
Yeah.
Of which 56 lakhs are salaried. So, it's a compulsory deduction.
They have to pay.
It's a compulsory deduction at source, so they have to pay. So, this whole body of lawyers, doctors, chartered accountants, professionals, traders, businessmen, industrialists in this vast world's fastest growing economy, the total number voluntarily paying more than 5 lakh rupees income is 20 lakhs.
Yeah.
So every time on the run up to the budget, when I went through this data, and the whole debate was those who pay tax want relief. But I said, but where are they? Out of 125 crores, there are 20 lakhs of them who are voluntarily paying tax. The others is salaried, who have no option. Therefore, I think this has to change. And that is why I have repeatedly
said... Will this change with a stick or with a carrot or with a loving hand or with a stake?
I think it's both. I asked a former US government official who visited me a week, 10 days ago, why are people in America, the US tax compliant? He said, because they fear the IRS. That happens all over the world.
Yeah.
So I think you need a mix of both. And when you need a mix of both, you will need to analyze this data. So what is the scheme at the moment? You give them a voluntary option through IDS. You demonetized. So the anonymity attached to cash has been lost. So we know who's the owner of cash. Yeah. Third, we make through GST future cash generation difficult. Every stage of the transaction will be caught in the software. Through changes in the tax law, you make expenditure in cash difficult.
Yeah.
Then you have an onerous penalty on people who avoid.
Yeah.
And then to excite people to pay tax, you give them a very attractive rate.
Yeah.
And a very tax-friendly administration. So it's a mix of carrot and stick, as you said. So what have I done? All those below 5 lakh rupees,
they are happy today.
I have said you pay only 5%. Now, that actually means that if you make an ATC investment or you invest something from your housing loan, etc., you pay very little or if not zero. But I have not raised the exemption limit because I don't want the body of taxpayers to shrink. Yeah. We need to follow their spending pattern. Even if you pay only 1,000 rupees, I want you to be in the debt. So I have now given, and then I have softened the tax administration to say, your return will be half a page form.
That is, I would say a monumental. How will you do half a page? I mean, is there a certain...
Half a page form, and then you, in a half a page form, there will be no scrutiny in the first year. Last year, you know what I did? Every businessman and trader or workshop owner, up to 2 crore turnover, I said, don't maintain books, just file a 1-page return. I have income up to 2 crores. 8% is your presumptive profit. Today I have said that if you pay by check or digital, this 8 will become 6% will be your presumptive profit.
So that's a 25% saving in tax.
If you spend by digital.
Yeah, it's not just 2%.
All professionals, lawyers, doctors, etc. I have said, if you earn up to 50 lakhs, no books of account to be maintained, 50% is presumed to be your expenditure.
Yeah.
Pay the tax on the balance. So if you are a 40 lakh earning professional,
Yeah.
You get a 20 lakh reduction straight, no book, it's a half a page reduction which is required. Now these are various taxpayer friendly measures in the tax administration. So now we have given you the best rate possible, a negligible rate. By paying 2,000 or 3,000 rupees, you can make a disclosure of 4.5 lakh rupees income. You pay half a page return, no scrutiny. So we are making the tax system attractive for you. There is a stick also waiting if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because we are tracing your expenditure. We are making expenditure difficult, we are making generation difficult. I hope by a combination of these measures,
Yeah.
because my overall approach has been, because I've said in this budget in a sentence, when there are a lot of people who don't pay taxes, their share has to be paid by the honest people.
Yeah.
So the honest, you pay your taxes plus you
Yes,
pay for the man
and
who
my
didn't pay his
CA makes
taxes.
me pay a lot of
So
tax. because-
therefore, I have now to the average taxpayer reduced his burden.
And there is some people who are saying that you've added another surcharge for, of course, it's for 50 lakh to 1 crore.
You see, I'll tell you, Chetan, the surcharge existed beyond 1 crore rupees.
Anyway.
Now I brought it a smaller surcharge for 50 lakhs or more. Now these are sections which can pay. World over, the highest earning income groups have to pay more. You live in a city like New York.
It's 50% tax.
Everybody pays 50% tax. You go to Australia, which is a developed society, you pay 48% tax. In England, you pay 40% tax plus. So we are now giving you all these rebates. The rebate which I have given to the less than 5 lakhs, for the first 5 lakhs, it's available even to the higher income
It
groups.
is available, yes.
So everybody, his tax bracket comes down. So the honest will be helped and the compliant will be helped. But we have to bring in the non-compliant into the tax net.
Yes, definitely. And in fact, coming to that, you've made a big change in the SMEs for 50 crore below turnover, 25%
You see,
tax.
I had promised that world over, if you see, why are corporate taxes lower? In America, if you have 50% personal highest income tax, the Trump supporters are saying make it 18%. Theresa May is saying that I'll try and go down to from 25% to 18% and things like this. Because they are competing economies, I offer a better corporate tax, generate a surplus and invest in my company. That's the whole country, that's the whole idea. So that surplus generated is invested. And don't forget, it's not comparable to individual taxes, because in India, over and above that tax, you also have to pay the dividend distribution tax,
yes.
another 20%. So you have to bring it down. Now when I calculated, and I said I'll phase out the exemptions. Exemption phasing out will take some time because the exemptions are time bound. So I have given that, without the phasing out, I have given relief to those with a 50 crore turnover. So this is not only MSME, but this is MSME plus.
Plus, yeah.
These are the real job creators in the country. You go to any industrial area, you will find a company with a 30 crore, 40 crore turnover, employing 200, 300 people. So these are the people who needed to be helped. They were also partly hurt during the demonetization period, and therefore a boost was required to be given to these people. And it's in consonance with my promise. I bring them down to 30%. Now those running partnerships and sole proprietorships, unstructured businesses, should make companies, they'll pay 5% less.
Yeah.
Because now then you will have proper balance sheets, you'll file them with ROC, there'll be transparency in your working.
So that's the thought behind. But why not the big companies? Some people are saying, why aren't you doing it for big companies? Because you want to invite FDI.
I'll tell you, as far as the big companies are concerned, they are cleverer than you and me.
Yes.
So I have in my speech given data that the big companies availing the exemptions are already paying only 25%.
Okay, so they are already.
There's the small ones who are paying 30%. So the big ones avail of the exemptions and are already paying 25%. So I give, if I could, let's say if I could give more relief, if I could afford more relief, I'd rather give it to a more vulnerable section. Why should I give it in the first instance at least to somebody who's in any case paying 25%?
Got it, got it. We have Soumya Ranjan Jena. Again, it's a demonetization question. I don't know if you will be able to directly answer this, but like I said, we will take the tough questions. So Ask Your FM question is, when RBI will give figure on how much old currency
Let me tell you.
got
I have
deposited in new
two responses.
Yeah.
The RBI has a huge exercise to do.
Okay.
Now, all these lakhs of crores of rupees which have come from umpteen number of branches all over the country, they have to go through every currency note through the machine.
Yeah.
They have to take out any fake note out of that. And after they do the whole exercise, they will come out with the final figure, which will be they can come out with a preliminary figure maybe earlier. So to say that it's just counting the number of pages and just announcing it, it's not, it's a little more exercise, it's a difficult exercise than just tweeting itself. Because the RBI has to count notes which are where room after room, building after building is full of those old notes itself. Secondly, how much has been deposited becomes academic for one good reason. Some people, and I found some of my political opponents also measuring the success of demonetization on how much has not been deposited.
Yeah.
Deposited money doesn't become white money merely because it is deposited.
Yeah. Now you're going after them, like you just said.
It is still liable to taxation. Now, once I announced that it is liable to taxation, so even if it is totally unaccounted, the owner had an option of destroying 100% or saving 50% by paying 50% tax. So he'll obviously deposit it and pay 50% tax. So my tax revenue will go up, and this money ipso facto doesn't become white by the factum of deposit.
Yeah. My last question on demonetization: did it ever scare you when you saw TV channels showing people in ATMs and news reports? Do you feel the media was fair in doing that? Did you ever feel that?
Well, I must say, it's for the media themselves to judge. The first 7-8 days, there were very large queues. Then when people started going digital and money started coming out on ATMs and so on, the queues reduced. Every morning, without fail, I used to do an exercise of going to one area of Delhi and visiting 50 or 70 ATMs.
Oh, you personally did?
I used to personally do. I would go to South Delhi or West Delhi or Connaught Place in these areas. And after the first few days, I found that the queues were shortening. So what was 200 people in the initial stages became 50 and then became 10. And finally, at times, it was 2 or 3 people. Let's say after
a month
4 weeks or so. I was surprised. I told some friends in the television also, at least in the second week of December, don't show the 10th November footage.
Oh, you think that was happening?
I think this was happening almost as a rule.
Let's find the most dramatic footage. Okay, we move on to something which is also very important, farmers' incomes. You started, in fact, your budget talking about rural things. And Arsh Mogre asked, what is the roadmap to doubling farmers' income? You talk, it's like a target that the per capita income of a farmer should double.
This is the most vulnerable section of society.
Of course.
Farming is no longer remunerative. Therefore, on one hand, you have the government schemes to assure them a minimum support price. That they get what they spend plus they get a little more. So every year, every crop season, we increase the quantum. So we put more money. Then farmers have to get into the habit, in addition to farming, of alternate employment. One member of the family works, so create jobs in their rural areas. You go in for poultry, you go in for dairy, you need communication. So you need an infrastructure in villages which can attract that kind of activity. You need employment opportunities. Where there is none, you create Manrega as an opportunity. And therefore, the entire investment plan that we have for villages, what are we spending money on? We are first creating rural roads, highest ever money. We are providing them with rural sanitation. We are spending huge amount of money on irrigation. If the crop fails, we are providing them the Fasal Bima, subsidized by the state. We are now creating houses under the Awas Yojana. We are now creating all kinds of social and physical infrastructure. And I think once you are able to do that, and then we are supporting their poultry, their dairy, and all this attempt, you create school in the village, there'll be a job created. And then even though it was a Congress government scheme, we have continued to adopt it because the informal sector is under stress. And in the previous government, they would allocate 40,000 for Manrega, end up spending 24,000.
Yeah.
Last year, I allocated 38,000, ended up spending 47,000.
Yeah.
This year, I have allocated 48,000. So that even the rural wages for the weakest, some support system comes into play.
Okay, good. Sir, you talked about railway. This is another big thing about this budget was the rail budget got integrated in it, and I think you even mentioned that you wouldn't mind. In fact, you would like to see IRCTC being listed. It's a site we use every day. Are they ready? Firstly, are they even in that shape? Because listing requires a certain.
I'll tell you. Last year, I had announced that the GIC companies, the non-life insurance companies, 5 of them would be listed, and the whole process is complete. This year, hopefully, coming year, they will be listed. One of the SEBI listing requirements is that at least the government can hold a maximum of 74%. Yeah. So 26% of those companies would actually have to be loaded into the market. So there'll be a more accountability and their performance related. Now, this year we are going to go in as a rule for more of the other PSUs being listed and those which are not listed on the stock exchange. Now, IRCTC, are you aware that it has the largest hits as far as the site is concerned?
I am 100% aware. It is a site I think all Indians use.
It's a site all Indians use. Today, 60% of your booking, 68% or so, I think I mentioned in the speech today, is through digital mode.
Yeah.
People use that, they pay through the digital mode. It's the largest railway traveling network. 2 crore people travel every day. They use this site. It's a site more visited than any other site. Why should it not have huge valuations and not be listed? And once it's listed, 26% goes into the market, 74% remains with the government. And therefore, one by one, each one of these has to be listed. Otherwise, these are idle assets lying.
Yeah.
And these are worth billions and billions of rupees.
No, definitely. Even speaking of disinvestment, even your economic survey talks about Air India. And I know we keep on targeting Air India because I think the government is doing so many steps to improve the way things are done, but Air India is almost a symbol of mismanaged and
I'll tell you, not many people would remember, for a period of 7 months, I was India's first disinvestment minister in Mr. Vajpayee's government. Mr. Chaudhary then took over. And one of the speeches I gave at that time in Mumbai was, please disinvest, privatize Air India.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then there'll be nothing left to privatize.
Yeah.
I had said this way back in 99, 2000. Now the situation is that Air India, in terms of number of aircrafts, in terms of its connectivity, is doing quite well. Its current management, at least as far as is in cash profit, it's not in losses. But the debt overhang is so much that to expect somebody to take that is a little difficult. The second important factor is that 86% of the airline sector in India is in private hands.
Yeah.
Now look at what private sector has done and what private sector in a success story can do. And I think India's aviation is a huge success story. Are our airports, the big ones, better than the ones in the US?
Yes.
Unquestionably they are. So today you brought in private sector into these big airports of Mumbai, Hyderabad, Delhi,
even small
Bangalore.
towns like Dehradun or
No, how you did it was that from these privately managed airports, we get that royalty, minimum assured return. Airport authority became a cash-rich body with thousands of crore every year, which it started investing on all the small airports. So if you go to Jaipur or Ahmedabad or Goa, you can now see the change in the quality of airports. So your airports are world quality, they're slowly becoming. There are some 35 more airports which we are adding as a part of the regional connectivity. So they'll all be like this. Today, India has 70 airports where flights land, which is not bad.
No.
This will increase to 105 airports. So look at the kind of connectivity. Second, average first class and second AC fares are now competing with railway fares.
Yes.
So railways is getting a challenge. Third, airline secretary, the Secretary of Aviation told me that in 2016, more people traveled by air in India than by first or second AC.
Oh, really? That is a very interesting statistic.
So you have, now you have 5 or 6 private airlines competing with each other, and then you have Air India. So the private sector occupies 86. So every destination is collected. To go from one destination to another, you have multiple choices, you have fluctuating fares. So aviation is slowly becoming, like telecom, a success story in India. I think we need to move in that direction. Now, Air India is a legacy of the regulatory regime where governments must have monopoly. Now, these kind of bodies could sustain in a monopoly environment. So, Air India really needs, its current management, I am told, is doing quite well in terms of connectivity, in terms of acquisition of planes. It is now, at least internationally, I find it doing quite well with a good connectivity. And I think it has to either adjust in this environment or find an alternative avatar.
Okay, okay. That's good. Coming to politics and economic, one question by Dilip Cherian, who says that how did you do it? Because it's like a very economist kind of budget, which basically means a sensible allocation of money budget, and doesn't seem, people can't really point to something that this is done for politics, especially at 5 assembly elections coming up, and people even accused the government that they're doing the.
No, we did not want to make any state-specific announcement for those 5 assemblies. That's a discipline in a democracy, which we followed by. I think what was the philosophy behind this? The philosophy was spend more because private sector is spending less.
Yes.
And spend more in areas which are success stories, where results are visible. You spend in villages, results are visible.
Highways.
You spend on highways, results are visible. So you spend more. Secondly, you continue your reforms, list public sector, abolish FIPB, these kind of changes that you need to do. Thirdly, because you need to carry on reforms in order to make sure that currency doesn't flow out of India to the US, which as a result of the Trump factor it is. So you have to halt that process. Thirdly, stick to your promise, get more people into the tax net, but be very reasonable with the honest and the compliant taxpayer.
Yeah.
Encourage sectors like irrigation, sectors like housing, because they are big job creators. Encourage MSMEs because they've taken a little bit of a hit. Put as much resources into agriculture and rural areas.
Yeah.
Now, these were the logical common sense proposition. And I think if you had 10 economists in a room, the fundamentals they will all agree on.
Yeah, definitely. But I'll talk about someone who's not an economist, but is your opponent, Rahul Gandhi. You spoke just of jobs, and he's saying that it's not what he expected because he wanted you to create 2 crore jobs. I don't know what you could do to create that in a budget, but
I think,
do you think, like, what exactly is he referring to?
Well, I'd once used a phrase in Parliament where I had wondered how much does he know and when will he know?
All right.
Is job creation to be done in isolation of the economy? So you need a higher growth that will create jobs. You need to invest in infrastructure that will create jobs. You need to incentivize industry, the SMEs, that will create jobs. You need to strengthen your skill development, which we have, which will create jobs. You need in the informal sector to support Manrega, which will create jobs. Now, these are all steps which we have taken, which will help in the creation of that job process. Now, it's not something that you don't do anything and you'll find jobs being created. Now, each one of these elements will add to the impetus of creating jobs.
Okay. Speaking broadly of criticism, yours is a job, there is a lot of judgment involved, and so when there is judgment, there will be criticism coming your way, whether it's sometimes it's even your ex-colleagues like Mr. Shuri, who said, sometimes it's Subramaniam Swamy, who has a view on how you're functioning. How does that affect you personally? Does it somewhere demotivate you, or do you feel like saying something, or is it amusing? Have you done politics enough?
I can only answer in one sentence. Motivated criticism doesn't demotivate you.
Okay. So you think it's all motivated. So what's...
No. But if there is a legitimate criticism, I think it's a way of life. It helps you to improve on what may be a possible lapse on your part, or some criticism or comment can actually flag an issue which hasn't crossed your mind.
Yeah.
So I would take to that very positively. But then there are those who are only into personalized commentary.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think it's better to look the other way.
Speaking of one person who I believe has often got criticism for you, but he keeps a good balance of keeping it intellectual and not personal, is the ex-finance minister, Mr. P.C. Chidambaram. He always has a view. He always has a view on what you say, and I find you guys sparring sometimes, like in a very fun manner.
I think it's a legitimate. It's only legitimate that he's handled this ministry for a very long time, and therefore he has views. He has experience, and he has politics which is contrarian to ours, and vice versa. I have a politics which is contrarian to his, and therefore making critical comments or making even comments which may not necessarily be critical but maybe a note of caution or flagging certain issues, I think is a legitimate part of his job now as an important opposition leader. I take it in the best of spirit. As long as, when I first entered Parliament, Mr. Advani, I don't know whether he still remembers it, in one of my early days, sitting next to me in Parliament, told me, whenever you speak in Parliament, you must make sure you speak on issues and not on persons.
Yeah,
and I
wish that happened in Parliament.
I thought this advice came from a person with a huge amount of experience. I have at least never forgotten his advice.
Yes, but not everyone follows it, you would admit.
But that's all right, it's a part of the game.
Yeah. Can we have some more questions? I think this one, Nishi asks, only concentrated on railways. What about road transport?
No, I'll tell you.
No, I think although you may.
You see, I have allocated over 64,000 crores for national highways, 27,000 crores totally to be spent on rural roads, and together on the transport sector, including railways, we have provided 2,41,000 crore, which is the highest ever. In fact, the highways and the rural roads, the way they are going, are an important success story.
Yeah. While they load more questions, I'll ask one. You've talked about creating an integrated state-run energy company, right? And it's to compete, if I heard it right. And does it mean that we can expect a merger of the big oil?
I think it's for the. You see, at times you have ideas for the future.
Yeah, I know it's not
if
on
you
the
remember
anvil.
Arvind Subramaniam's economic survey last year, there was a chapter subsidies for the rich.
Yeah.
Which let a lot of people thinking. This time he's put a chapter on universal basic income as a substitute to the present method of subsidies. These are wonderful ideas which are on the table for a debate. And therefore, I have put this issue of a possible upstream, downstream kind of an integration.
So like a ONGC merges with the IOC?
No,
I know,
like
I'm not saying it's happening.
No,
but
I have just put that as an idea. It is for the Ministry of Petroleum now to examine all aspects of this idea.
All right. Well, let's see what they... you have also done away with something which is again a very 70s, 80s thing, planned expenditure, non-planned expenditure. You just done away with that. Was that again an attempt to simplify?
See, I think there are three big reforms. One is what was sacrosanct about 28th February.
Yeah.
Because the British did it, we must do it. The British used to do it at 5 o'clock. You know why?
Why?
Because it was relatable to GMT.
Oh, okay.
So during Mr. Vajpayee's government, we said, why must we present the budget as per GMT?
Yeah, so that London is up and awake. So
London is up and awake. So we did it in reference to IST. The second, in 1924, the member in the Viceregal Lodge, when he presented the union budget, he said we need a separate rail budget because rail budget is bigger than the national budget. Today, it's a minuscule part of the national budget. The highway budget is bigger than the railway budget today. So, and the third is to do away with this planned, non-planned, and you must have revenue and capital.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just, since we are running out of time, I'll just ask one last question, one or two last questions. One is, you know, these are all changes which, when you tell me, seem to be very sensible. You should do it when not to the British time. You should do away with planned, unplanned because no longer makes sense. The railway budget shouldn't be separate. Why do you think previous governments weren't able to do it? Is it to do with the personalities now, you, the Prime Minister, who are embracing change? Is it the mandate you have?
If I look back, I think the first break from thinking was brought by Mr. Narasimha Rao.
Okay.
Whether it was out of compulsion, it was reforms under compulsion, but he did it. And Dr. Manmohan Singh as his finance minister, Mr. Amarnath Verma as the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, I am told, were the three people who pushed the whole thing. And I think it brought a big change. After 2 years or so, they were halted.
Yeah.
But they'd set a direction. I think in the United Front government, Mr. Chidambaram as the finance minister had one very good budget, very rationalized rates and so on, which was a step forward. Mr. Vajpayee's government, I think in telecom, in highways, infrastructure, divestment, privatization, brought in a lot of ideas. So consistent governments have moved. UPA had a great opportunity for 10 years. I think they got taken over by an alternative thinking. The NAC dominated the thinking.
Okay.
So they didn't concentrate on how to generate growth. They concentrated on how to distribute existing resources.
Okay. Okay.
They had the benefit initially of the boom years of the global economy till 2008.
Yeah.
And once that process ended, they didn't know which way to go. And then they got stuck in this allocation of natural resources. I think the present government, this whole end to discretionary allotments, this whole jam trinity, now these are all ideas which have been coming, and therefore I think you have a Prime Minister who's very clear as to what government's role is and what the role of those in the private sector is going to be. Our role is policy and we should stick to that.
Okay. My last question will be a fun question. Guys, this is the big budget document you get. So I asked you this last time also. Is it true, and I think you can confirm it, that there is a bunker in South Block and people are kept there, those who work on the budget, they stay there at night. It's all very, you know, hush-hush, secret agent type stuff happening. Is that a urban myth or is it true?
No, it is true. It is true.
It is true.
It is true. You see, the budget making, the consultation process, for instance, for a 1st February budget would start in October, September. And then we hear the stakeholders through December. And then each one of these documents is to be prepared. Now that preparation is shrouded in secrecy. So you have a basement press created by the British where it is printed. Now the printing starts, and then you had 105 people who were locked into the press. Entry and exit is prohibited. They sleep there, they eat there. There are beds, there are
No
barracks
phones.
there. There are no phones. They work on this. They enjoy themselves. They're used to it. And they get a great pride, I must tell you. When they go back, they take this one set each with them, and they get a great pride out of the fact that I printed this budget.
Well, I'm also going to take this with pride, and thank you to you for working so hard on the budget and answering all these questions. Thank you to all the 105 people who were in that bunker and everybody from the IB ministry who made this beautiful direct access of citizens to the FM in world's biggest democracy happen. So thank you again for your time. I know you're very tired, but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.